Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Frequency. So in this episode, obviously, we get the reveal. Obviously, we got revealed at the end of last episode, but we have Raimi as well as Frank finding out, the picture that Nightingale took from Frank was there found on Amanda's body. It's like he's sending a sign to them. It's like he's taunting him. Frank's kind of like, it doesn't, doesn't mean nothing. It's like, why did he leave you alive and stuff like that? And that is the question. Is it because he knows, it's like he wanted to accept the challenge, because he sees Raimi on TV all the time being like, oh yeah, we're going to catch the Nightingale, make him pay for all. Maybe that's kind of like, she kind of incited him a little bit. Now this is kind of going off a little book, but kind of making comparison to kind of like Red John from The Mentalist. That's kind of the reason why Red John went after Jane and his family specifically, because Jane kind of like talked crap about him, so he targeted Jane specifically to make a point. So maybe that's the same thing, because it's also like, hey, your dad tried to catch me in the past. It's like, no. Oh, you trying to catch me now? Okay, here I am. I gotta show you up. So he made sure to kill Amanda just to kind of stick it even more to him. It's like, your dad went to the trouble of saving her, and now I killed her, and now you have to try. I want to see you try and catch me. Because we interestingly enough learned a little bit more, kind of behind the psychology behind the Nightingale killer, is why he does the things he does, like the whole beads and everything. And because basically, because it's all happened because it's like, hey, let's take a fresh look at the files and everything, because Satch was like, hey, I'm calling it quits. Raimi didn't hear this from him directly. She actually heard it from Stan. Because in this episode, it kind of gave you an interesting thing where you kind of got to see 20 years ago for Satch versus 20 years, in present day, where it's like in the past, he's looking at TV so happy and everything. It's like, oh man, we were able to save Amanda. My partner was able to save Amanda from the Nightingale killer. And you look present day, it's like, oh, Amanda got killed by him. Going back home, his wife's not there, his children, just because they up and left him because the job became everything. And so you just see that he's just living there alone, kind of not really having anybody. And he honestly just got too tired of the job, because it had become all that there was to it. That's who he became. It was the job. And it's like, because it's things stacked on top of other things. It's like that, the job. The fact is that he lost his, wife and children, just like he lost his family because of the job. Then Julie, then, lost Frank. And it's just kind of like, now Amanda, at least the one saving grace in all of it was like, at the very least to it all, it's like, I was doing my job good. But now it's like one of the people that you were like, oh, she was safe. And it's like, no, she got taken now too. And it's just one thing after another. And that's why he just wanted to kind of call it quits, because it's like he'd already given everything for this job. And it's just like, in the long run, I guess, because in his mind it's kind of like it didn't pay off. It's like, because at the end of it all he's done is lose. It's like the one really good thing, sure, Satch has done plenty of good things in his career, but that one particular thing is like Amanda saving her from the Nightingale. It's like, thought you got one up on him. Even after all these years, it's like, yes, he killed some other people, and it's like, you're not necessarily close to catching him, but at the very least, it's like you got one victim away, and it's like that was snatched from them, so. But the thing is, they end up looking back through some of Satch's file, because Satch actually has like an entire area designated to this particular case. Because even when Raimi stepped in, she looked around, she's like, holy crap, just realizing, just because I think for Satch, he became very obsessed with the case too. I guess it doesn't hurt the fact is that Frank was there too. Because I'm sure naturally as a cop, it's like, this is a case that he can't let go of. And I'm sure Frank by his side didn't make that any easier, so. Especially considering the fact is that he's still out there and everything. It's not like a cold case. It's still a heavy ongoing case. So, but they end up looking through it and end up finding out that there was a lady that was discovered. Basically, her name was Marissa. She is apparently a victim of the Nightingale. They never put two and two together, because it's like she wasn't a nurse, that basically her bones got a little scattered, but they were like her two forearms, the bones for her forearms are apparently still together. And Raimi's kind of like, well, that could be, the reason why they're still there is because it's like, well, her hands were bound. They end up finding out from her brother that she was working at a camp called Hideaway, and that there, on occasion, she was a teacher, but on occasion she moonlit as a nurse And so it kind of got them deciding to go check it out, and they did. And this kind of plays into what I was mentioning earlier, which I completely sidetracked from, was the psychology behind Night. I guess I kind of mentioned it earlier as to why. It was kind of probably like religious reasons why they did what he does, because in his mind, the Nightingale thinks he's saving these women from whatever thing it is in their lives. He thinks he's saving them, giving them kind of a good death, binding their hands with rosary beads, and then like there's like a tub and everything. So it seemed like the camp was a very religious place. It was founded in '59, but it closed in like 1992 because they went bankrupt. The people who had founded it, well, the camp went bankrupt and whatnot, so they had to shut down. But Marissa was apparently possibly was kept there because they're kind of alluding to maybe the Nightingale knew her from camp, whether he was someone that attended or was aware of her from there, and that's what kind of started this all day. Marissa might have been the very first victim. But along with the good also comes the bad, because you have, in the past, you have I can't remember her character's name, but it's the actress Alicia Diaz, which I was literally looking at pictures like this last episode. I don't know if I brought that up or not, but I was looking, I was like, is that her? I was like, nah. I was like, I must be imagining things, because it's like I've been seeing her and stuff, Ray Donovan in the zoo. I was like, I must be imagining things. That's not her. And then it turns out this episode, it is her. I was like, dude, that's crazy. But apparently she's the woman from, obviously, we found out last episode it was someone that Frank kind of got close to while he was undercover. Was not expecting that turnaround. It's like, oh yeah, I thought like, okay, it pop up eventually later or something. Like I knew she probably would eventually pop up in Frank's life since they went through the trouble of introducing them. I'm like, okay, but I was not expecting this. Like, oh, literally next episode she pops up. So, because apparently, I mean, that was kind of a message, because Stan is apparently cleaning house. Like, anyone that knows the ties between him and that whole shady business he's been up to and everything, the shady business that almost got Frank killed, he's kind of wiping the slate clean, because for her and Frank, like, it was more than just like they clicked. For different reasons. For her, it's like Frank was kind of the outsider who came in, kind of like almost like a knight in shining armor. Not necessarily because she didn't know he was a cop and everything, but he was there kind of to take her away. That's what she thought. It's like you were different, and they had something. And it's like even throughout all the lies and everything, she still felt like that it meant something, that was no lie, that was real. And so she thought like, he'd take her away from it all, but finding out he's a cop and everything, that Stan almost had him killed and everything, she tried to lay low, kind of needed some money, so she kind of went back into that world and, almost crossed paths with Stan and whatnot. So, but the fact that she went to Julie and everything, it's like, oh yeah, asking for Frank. Julie, not knowing who she was, patches her up a little bit and then starts asking all these questions, because, she starts looking around and it's like, wait, you have a family? Oh, you're his wife, you have children. He never said anything to me. And it's like, ooh, his entire world is crumbling. Like I brought up last episode, it's sad because him and Julie on the rocks. There have been some bad times, obviously, lately. I mean, things were already rough, but with the added stress of like Nightingale killer, plus the whole like knowing the future thing, knowing that she becomes a Nightingale victim is kind of making him a little stressed. So it's like, it makes you wonder how would things work out for Frank if the whole Raimi aspect of his life, future Raimi, had never entered his life. Would he have been able to readjust, or would things still kind of fallen apart? I feel like things still would have fallen apart, because it's like, because he spent so much time as someone else, it's not that easy to go back to being just a regular person, in my opinion. He can't fit back into his life, because he's like it's like he was, the puzzle piece that is his life. It's like the shape of the puzzle piece that is him in the grand scheme of his life just doesn't quite fit anymore. It's like the shape changed when he was undercover and everything, which to him, he was like, yo, because you saw him excited about it. He's like, oh, I'm getting an undercover job and everything. He's like, no, I'm doing good, baby. Julie is going to make us stronger and everything. And and sadly, it seems more so than anything, it tore them apart. It put such a big strain and stress on the relationship and everything. And it does seem like Frank legitimately did do it for the right reasons. He was trying to just, catch the bad guys. It's like, working undercover narcos and whatnot. So, but you tie that in with the fact is of what happens with this other lady. It's just kind of like, you can understand why Julie's kind of pissed. And I don't it's not that I appreciate it. I can't believe Frank tries to turn on her. He's like, what about you? Because she's like, did you know that I was wearing my wedding ring the entire time you were gone? It's not like I took it off. It's because I was always hoping you'd come back home and I could have you back to me again. And so, like, him saying, like, oh, well, what about you? She's like, you mean with Raimi's like softball coach? Like, she's like, yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, there was something like that. Like, nothing happened. It's like, but he was there to comfort me. He was there to talk to me. You weren't there for me. You still aren't there for me. And it's just kind of like Frank's got to admit he kind of messed up. Like, he's apologizing and everything, but it's like, it's Julie has a right to be mad. There's no one saying like, oh, you should forgive him. It's like, no, he slept with another woman when he was married to you. It's like his family is waiting home for him, and he's there being with another woman. I'm surprised he actually. Well, I mean, I guess he really felt he kind of needed to, but he ended up telling Raimi about her, which is kind of interesting because, like, he told her to kind of stay behind and he's going to deal with this whole situation. He basically threatened Stan and everything. Was like, yo, stay the hell away from my family. Don't go near Elisa Diaz's character again, because I will put you down. Even punches him in the face, and he's just like, he bluntly says, he's like, yo, I know you try to have me killed. He's like, it's your word against mine. And then he's like, I guess you're not that smart, Frankie. He's like, me, I'm like a knuckle dragger. He's like, you're right. I'm just kind of I'm an idiot. But it's like, yeah, so what do you have to worry about, right, Stan? Saying like, I'm an idiot. You're smart and very good at covering your tracks and everything. So it's like, yeah, you kind of run this thing. So it's like, oh yeah, you don't have nothing to worry about, right? So, which is, obviously Frank saying like, think as low of me as you want to. It's gonna be that much sweeter when I come up and like uppercut you and knock you on your ass, and not necessarily in a more so in a metaphorical sense. I mean, knock him on his ass. So, but as we can see, that hasn't really affected. I mean, with the whole, time does seem like, I brought it up multiple times, like wondering how time shifts actually work when things change, but it seems like it is kind of an immediate thing. Like, we know immediately when things kind of change. So, multiple examples of that. So, but they kind of get Frank back, kind of like they go back to everything. Julie does sleep with the coach, but she doesn't seem happy about it. It does seem like more so than anything, it was just kind of out of revenge. It was like, yeah, there was something there, but she would have never really reacted. She never would have acted on it if this whole thing had never happened. So it's like, but she's laying there and you see it on her face, and he's like, oh, this is good. He's like, it was fun. Like, he's like, I thought about it, and it's like, it was fun. It was good. You're going through a lot, and it's like, this was good. But you see her just staring off blankly because it didn't change anything. Because deep down, no matter what goes down, she still loves Frank. The problem is her heart broken right now. She's hurting, and she just needed something in some way to kind of make him pay, a little revenge slash, an attempt to fill that hole in her heart. But I mean, it seemed like it didn't work out. So you have Raimi telling him to kind of like, he has to fix things with her. Like, because what I was getting to is the fact is that she disappeared later on because, Frank was like, stay at my place. But the moment he came back, she was gone. So either Stan ends up catching up to her or something. I don't know. But the thing is, I'm curious to know now that, Raimi knows, will she be looking her up in present day to find out where she is and stuff like that? Like I said, it'd be kind of interesting if you ended up finding out. It's like, oh yeah, actually, like, she ended up having a kid, and it's like, oh, is this Raimi's half sibling or something like that? Like, I brought that up last episode. I think that would be kind of interesting, but I doubt it would kind of go that route. I mean, it could, but I don't think it will. Satch might have decided to kind of stay, possibly, because like if he had left, things would have kind of been like that. Basically, Raimi would have had to report to Stan, and it's kind of like she wouldn't want that. It's because she knows deep down that Stan is dirty, and she just can't prove it. Sadly, she doesn't know that Satch is involved, and that's kind of something else I wanted to bring up. The fact of the matter is, Satch and Stan don't like. I mean, really, they never really even showed they had much interaction until that episode where it was kind of like when Stan was like telling Satch to get Raimi to back down. But like in the past too, it don't seem like there was anything there either. So maybe the whole them teaming up thing, like whatever that may be, it seems like that might not have been existing in the past. That might be one more thing that Satch has on his shoulders that makes him go like, you know what, I need to back away. Because it's like, how can you sit there and defend? Because it's like, he's like, "Oh, Raimi, here you go again with this whole thing. Like, why do you have such a problem with Stan? He might not go about things the most prettiest way, but he gets the results done." It's like, what are you talking about? How can you sit there and lie? Like, we know you're lying because you know he's a scumbag. Because whatever reason you two are working together, it must be that Stan has something on Satch. What that might be, I don't know. But it's very interesting, like, because this wasn't like a very, because normally episodes are kind of like focused on like, oh, something that might be connected to the Nightingale killings or directly connected to it, which, I mean, obviously some investigation, but more so than anything, it was more of kind of a reflective episode of just being like, everyone kind of reflecting, Frank reflecting, Raimi reflecting, this big part of Satch reflecting, and just kind of deciding like, essentially what's the right call in all this. For Frank and Raimi, it's like, how do you keep this balance? Because how do you keep the job from becoming all there is to you? It's like, because it started off with just, hey, I'm here to do a job, I'm trying to catch bad guys, to the point where it's all there is to. Because even for Raimi, like, being a cop is kind of taken over her life, and it's like she doesn't really have much of a life outside of that. It don't seem like Frank has much of one either. I mean, granted, when you look at their particular cases, it's kind of like, well, they have the whole Nightingale thing to be has to be considered and stuff. So, which does beg the question. It does make me wonder. Like, there's so much. I'm like, so many possibilities. I threw out last episode me throwing Daniel up as a suspect. It's like, well, part of me was, nah, I was an idiot, like literally thinking that I was like, oh, Raimi's softball coach, but it's like, nah, there's no way of that. He's just there for a story element of like Julie kind of getting her revenge. Because if that was a case of like, he wouldn't need to stalk her because he'd know her. But it's like, I am very curious because typically you look at things like this, kind of the mystery element. It's like, typically it make you think like, the Nightingale killer isn't someone you know. I mean, it seems like in a case like this, the series would make it so that with a killer like this, it seems like it might not be a character that we know of. Maybe that it's a character that's been in the background that like I said, that's why I'm kind of like throwing Daniel out there, because it's like, maybe it's not Daniel exactly, but maybe it's someone that took him in and raised him. Because the whole thing behind it is like, the reason why the Nightingale does what he does is because I think it's because it was done to him when he was younger. Like the whole like good, it was kind of maybe like beaten into him, like this whole, like I said, like I think I brought that up before, like it was kind of a past thought of mine, is being like my theory was kind of like he lashes out to women and stuff like that because like maybe kind of like, oh, there was a mother or someone in particular that kind of something happened with them and it resonated in his life, and every time he's doing this to them, to these particular women, he's kind of like, say like for whatever reason he killed his mom or something like that, and it's like resonating with every time he kills him. It's kind of like he's killing his mom over again, he's kind of reliving that high or something like that. But for him, it's about saving the women. And once again, I'm bringing that up, like, what does that mean exactly? Like, why save? Now, you take someone like Julie, for example, maybe saving her from a sad life because seeing that her marriage is falling apart or something like that, but you see her kid and everything. So maybe it does make you wonder, because the fact of the matter is Frank being alive changed that. Nightingale never came after Julie. Maybe because he never crossed paths with her because of that, or maybe it's because Jewel, I keep calling her Julie, Jewel, maybe for her, like, with Frank being gone and everything, maybe because he was kind of like considered a corrupt, like he was a dirty cop, in the original timeline, so maybe she was okay with just raising Raimi on her own and they were happy and everything. So maybe that's the reason why. Like I said, I threw it out there before because maybe that's connecting with Daniel and everything, because it's like Daniel's another thing that in her life that changed drastically because her mom was the reason why they got introduced and everything. And maybe that played a role in why she was in there. I don't know. There's so many, like I said, directions everything could take. Because something, interestingly enough, we never actually got much of a perspective on what life was like for Raimi in a world where everyone thought her dad was a corrupt cop. I mean, we saw it a little bit to a certain extent. We see her not, in the original timeline, not wanting her dad's badge that Satch went out of his way to kind of get for her just because he was a dirty cop. You have Stan kind of throwing that in her face and everything, but it's like, how did it really affect the rest of her life? I mean, she grew up kind of thinking the worst of her dad, but the thing is, how did Jules take it? Like, did she Was she defending Frank, or was she like everyone else, kind of thinking the worst? It's like, because for her, she saw the worst sides of Frank as time went on, just like while he was undercover and everything before he died in the original timeline. Because we already got to see that time exists in both timelines, in both the new timeline and the old. So. And then there was that guy we met last episode, the one that kind of says like, oh, he can talk to his future self and everything. I brought it up last episode. Like, I don't know if he was telling the truth or not. It's still kind of up in the air. I'm leaning more towards crazy, but maybe there was some truth, some validity to what he's saying. Maybe we'll kind of find out in the future. I'm just very curious to see where this all takes us next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.